So I want to thank Kesamaya, who was the brainchild of making this, and also Vaad Or Vechom, and then the Sheikh Chabad of Houston, and Mrs. Lazaroff, and everybody who made this possible, and especially all the women who agreed to share their own personal stories tonight, which I'm really excited to hear and be part of. In 1972, the Lazaroffs came to Houston and started from scratch. You know, today when shluchim go out, there's like kind of like, you know, we know what you're expecting, but when they were sent out by the Rebbe, it was a very new endeavor, a new situation, a new thing to do. And so we're very lucky here today, many, many years later, where we're able to be part of this wonderful Farbrengen with this wonderful situation. When the Frierdiker Rebbe was leaving Russia, he asked that nobody should come to Sholdat Shabbos, and nobody should come to the train station to say goodbye to him. And the reason for that was he was worried that it was kind of like a death sentence. If they came to the train station, they would, the KGB would be standing there with a paper and pen and writing down who was there, seeing off the Frierdiker Rebbe. And he was worried for his Hasidim. So he asked that nobody should come. But of course, the Shabbos before, people came anyway to the Farbrengen, but especially to the train station to see the Frierdiker Rebbe off, because they were very worried. It was the last time they were going to see the Rebbe. It was the last time they were going to be able to be there. Now, although it was very hard for Hasidim in those days to have contact with the Rebbe, because obviously everything was underground, but still they were able to send a message with somebody, with a different Hasid, or they were able to find a way to see the Rebbe or to connect or hear about stories that were happening. And there was, the Frierdiker Rebbe was leaving, and officially nobody was allowed to go into the train station. And there was one Chassid who was going, and as he was coming closer, he had his 9-year-old son with him. And as he's getting closer, he sees that there are a whole bunch of soldiers around with their rifles standing there and basically making a human block so that nobody could get into the train station. However, in the train station was packed, filled with Jews. They were full with Hasidim, obviously all kinds of people there, because this was the last time they were going to go see their Rebbe. And they didn't know what would happen, if they would even have communication after. You know, it was in those days where it was hard to communicate, not like today where we could Zoom. So they didn't, they didn't know what's going to be. So they ended up pushing themselves in. And this one chassid was running very late. And so he's schlepping along his son. And he's saying to his son, hurry, we're going to miss the train. We're going to miss the train. Come, we have to go see our Rebbe. And he comes in and he's blocked obviously by these soldiers. And so he pulls out a wad of money and he is trying to bribe somebody, one soldier who will maybe let him in. And finally one does. And he notices that they all have their jackets full. They all look pregnant almost with all their bribes that they already got. And they let him in. But in the train station, it is packed. It's really hot and it's full. You can't even move. And so he wants his son so badly to see the Rebbe. So he picks the son up on his shoulder and he says, look. Now in those days, there were three things that the train was going. So the first one, it was getting ready to go. The second one, it was going. And the third one was really the locomotive was gone. And so he's screaming at his son, look, see the Rebbe. And the Hasidim turned around to him and everybody's already almost leaving because the train already took off and the third siren already went. And he turns around and everybody says to him, look, the Rebbe already left. And so he said to his son and to the Hasidim around him that one day they won't even see the smoke. At least you should see the smoke of the train. So this story was always very special to me. My father always told it to me. And to me, the feeling that we need to be the smoke, we need to be the steam of the engine to keep our connection to the Rebbe alive. So tonight, hopefully, with all the stories and the personal feel of this, we can see how we can connect. So I would love to introduce Masha Belles. Masha Belles, when I moved to Houston, we were in the Carlisle Place apartments together. And it was very special Shabbosim and very special times together. So I would love for her to share her experience or her short stories of whatever she'd like to share with us.
Thanks, Chanie. I pulled some old pictures, so I'm going to share my screen and you can see those. Let's see. There we go. Okay, yeah. One more thing. Okay, so I was privileged to get dollars from the Rebbe 6 times. I got $10 in all because a couple of the times the Rebbe gave out $3 and he would give them, paperclip together. One of those times was Chavdal Teves. I went during high school, during winter break. I went in 1988. It was Tafshem Mem Tes and Nun Aleph and Nun Beis. And I went, a couple of the times I went with my sister, and also you might recognize Sharon Rubin. So my sister's on the left, Sharon is on the right. That was standing in line for dollars. And that's, I guess, a different year. And I don't really have any amazing wow kind of stories. Surprisingly not. I didn't say anything when I went through the line. I didn't ask anything. So essentially, all the times I went and got dollars, it was really fast. They were so fast, in fact, that there was never even a picture. After you would get dollars, you would go to that store on Kingston Avenue, the duplicator, I think it was called. You would tell them about what time you were in line, and they would give you that big binder of pictures to look through, and you just sort of flip through page after page until you found, the people who were with you in line. Hopefully you found yourself, but I never found my picture there. My sister had a picture. That's Sharon's picture. But they did have video a few years later. I guess they uploaded the videos. And so that must be from probably the first year, or maybe my first time I went for dollars. I was probably in 9th grade. And that was another year, 1990, it says on there. And this one, actually at one point, Asher Moshe found out that he asked them to take a still photo from the video, because literally there were no pictures. And this was the picture that he had chosen. And just when I was looking at it last week, I realized that the date on it, the English date is our English anniversary. It's 2 days off of our Hebrew anniversary, but I thought that was interesting. I never had noticed that before. And then just one other quick thing that I thought I would mention, it has to do with Hurricane Harvey. My parents' house flooded during the hurricane, and there were all the volunteers. Chabad had organized all the volunteers to go to different people's houses to help them clean up. And so my parents were assigned Rabbi Teldin and this group from San Antonio, and they literally came in and cleared out 40 years worth of stuff in my parents' house. They were schlepping and figuring out what could be salvaged, I don't know, dressers, beds, mattresses, whatever, just tons of stuff. And at one point they were in the room that I shared with my sister, and in this dresser, they pulled out one of the drawers, I guess, because when they were pulling the things to the front lawn, they took out all the drawers, and stuck underneath, stuck to the bottom of one of the drawers was a plastic bag that was wet, but inside of it were $2 of the dollars that my sister had gotten. And so they found those $2, which I gave to my sister, you know, the next time I saw her. So.
Wow, Masha.
Thank
you. That's something so special. It's funny when you showed the picture of the lines by the dollars. I remember my mother used to wake us up in the middle of the night, and we were really tired, and the siren would go off. The same siren that they put on Erev Shabbos to light Shabbos candles used to go off when the Rebbe was giving out something special, so even if it was the middle of the night, the siren would ring. And I remember we're a family of girls. We have 8 girls before we're 8 girls total. We have 6 girls before our first brother. So we were all a bunch of girls. And my mother used to have from us, okay, what should I wear? What should I wear? You know, and in the middle of the night, I remember we used to get dressed and we used to stand in the lines. And the line that you showed looked pretty empty, but sometimes there was really long lines waiting. And it was like, I remember I was very short, and I would like push people aside so I could get some air to breathe while I was standing there. And I remember not even appreciating it so much, but now I appreciate it a lot, especially all the svarim and everything that I got from the Rebbe. I'm very, very blessed. Thank you, Masha, for sharing. And that was so cute to see Sharon and all the other people that joined you on your high school things. The next person we have is Bayla Cotlar. Bayla, we're very lucky to have you in the community, and we're looking forward to hearing your story that you want to share with us, please.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, so I think maybe I was the very first person to still be here by the Rebbe Lazaroff from 1972 until now. And so that's really, really fantastic and very, very special. I feel like the Rebbe was in here because my husband and I said when we got married that we wanted to learn more about our Yiddishkeit. And we said, if someone comes and offers classes in Yiddishkeit, let's learn it, okay? And, you know, like 3 months later, someone in medical school told my husband, hey, there's a new rabbi in town. He's giving classes for women and men, their wives and husbands. We went, and slowly, Baruch Hashem, we're here today, and all our children are Chabad. But anyway, although I was not privileged to have a yechidus with the Rebbe, thanks to Mrs. Lazaroff, I was encouraged to write the Rebbe. And I've established a relationship that has brought me so much meaning, comfort, and guidance every day. And I advise everyone to do the same. It's never too late to start this relationship. So here are 2 brief stories that I'm going to talk about tonight. The first one, my precious sister Holly of blessed memory had something like 6 to 8 miscarriages, and about 3 or 4 years passed without her successfully birthing a child. One of our children was in line in the Sunday dollars for the Rebbe, and after he received the dollar, he gave it to me, and I gave it to Holly. And Holly also took on the mitzvah of mikvah. Within a few months, she became pregnant again. But sometime later, her OB-GYN told her that the fetus again seemed to be dying. He scheduled a D&C for her. Before they did it, they took another ultrasound, and amazingly, the fetus looked perfectly fine. She went full term and delivered a healthy boy, thank God. But the story doesn't end there. She kept that dollar, and she gave it to a friend who had also been trying to have a child for some years, and that friend got pregnant. And then a second friend who had been trying for years, and I'm pretty sure a third friend. 4 pregnancies from a dollar from the Rebbe. How powerful is something from the Rebbe? Story number 2. When I was almost 41 years old, I was 11 days overdue. So my excellent OB-GYN asked me to have an ultrasound. The Rebbe had advised us to try to have as few ultrasounds as possible, so I had only had one other the previous week. But I acceded to the second one, even though I didn't want to, because my doctor had been so patient, and throughout my entire pregnancy, he didn't force me to have ultrasounds or any other invasive tests. The previous ultrasound a week before showed all was fine. But this time, the radiologist kept me in much longer, turning me this way and that way and sending me back to my OB-GYN. He told me that the fetus in my womb had a diaphragmatic hernia. That meant that there was a large hole in the fetus's diaphragm, allowing the stomach to come into the chest, crowding out normal development of a second lung. Had I not listened to the Rebbe's advice, had I had ultrasounds earlier in my pregnancy, I would have been a nervous wreck. Had Hashem not put one of the top radiologists on call that morning, we would have thought all was fine, as the previous week had shown. And had I delivered without knowing this, the newborn might not have survived. But now things moved fast. My doctor said a C-section would be scheduled a few hours later. A neonatal team was prepared for the resuscitation needed. The baby would need a major surgery shortly after delivery. Hearing all that was going to happen, I called Rabbi Lazaroff. He said he would fax the Rebbe. In those days, faxes were really new. We didn't have one, and it was really exciting to hear that he did. And he got a bracha for us, thank God. Fast forward about 15 years later, and we saw our surgeon, Dr. Bloss, somewhere, and we updated him about Ben. He told us that it remained the largest successful diaphragmatic hernia he had ever had to repair. May Ben live to 120 with the Rebbe's continued brachas of health and revealed good. And so again, I just want to leave with the message that it's not too late to start or further your relationship with the Rebbe. Thank you.
Wow, Bayla, thank you so much for sharing. That was amazing. And Bayla talked about the idea of writing to the Rebbe. That was actually my hachana this Shabbos. We were having a little Farbrengen with our family during this Corona time, which has been so interesting. It's the first time ever in my life that we're having no guests at my Shabbos table. It feels very strange, but if this is what Hashem wants, this is obviously the way it's going to be. So one of the concept was you're not allowed to make a l'chaim until you come up with some hachana. And the hachana we came up is to try to write in more often, to give the Rebbe an update of what's going on in our lives and just connect that way. And like you said, that's the importance. Such a beautiful story, and thank you again, Bayla. And now we're going to ask Miriam Fishman, who has been a pillar in the community. She's been very involved in also mikvah, and her and together with Bayla and many others have been, one of the earlier people. And so it's nice to hear their connections to the Rebbe. And let me see where she is. 1 second. Sorry, Miriam. Here we go.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you. Yes, Miriam. Let me.
Okay, great.
1 second. Don't stop.
This
yet.
is the.
Okay.
So this is not my favorite medium, but this is the new normal, I guess, for a Farbrengen. My story actually started on a Sunday when my husband told me that there was a couple who had come for medical reasons to Houston from Israel, and they were returning, that he had had successful treatment, and he was returning, the couple was returning to Israel, and he would like me to go with him to say goodbye, which was a little bit strange. Irv usually didn't share, his patients with me. He was very, kept things very confidential, but he thought this was very important, so I went with him. So we go to this motel, and there's an older couple there. And what was really interesting is that the four of us did not have a common language. The couple spoke Hebrew and Hungarian. I speak Hungarian and no Hebrew, and Irv speaks Hebrew and no Hungarian. So the four of us didn't have a common language. So what happened was I started speaking to the wife in Hungarian, and Irv started speaking to the husband in Hebrew. And the woman says to me that she has a story to tell and she would like my help. So I'm looking at her, you're going back to Israel, what exactly can I do for you? So she said, well, I need to tell you my story. So the story is that they had made arrangements for her husband to have surgery with a surgeon here in Houston. And they were informed, and they were not an affluent couple. The community had helped them raise money for their trip and bought tickets for them. And in those days, Ashel House was not here, and it was a struggle. It was a struggle for anyone coming here. So they managed to put it all together, and then they got a call that their surgeon was hospitalized. So they just didn't know what to do. Should we still come? They had tickets already. So they called their daughter to get advice. The daughter, the couple was not observant at all, or not yet, as Rabbi Traxler likes to say. And but their daughter had started to become frum, and she was learning. And she came over, and they told her the situation, and she said that they should have faith in Hashem, and that they should go. They already have the tickets. In those days, this was many years ago, it was very much more complicated to travel, and that they should go. And she said, I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you this picture, and if you run into any difficulties, that you should daven to Hashem in your own words, but you can ask this man to intervene on your behalf and help you. They thought that was very strange, but she took the picture and she put it in her purse, and they came to Houston. So then she proceeds to tell me that their trip was one miracle after another. This couple did not speak one word of English, not one. And so they arrive in Houston, and they have no idea, where do we go? What do we do? They're standing there discussing, should they take a taxi? Should they try to find a bus or something? Because they don't have much money. A car pulls up, and for those old timers, it was Chezi Shalom. It was an Israeli man. He officially was not there to have anything to do with this couple. He was there for some other purpose. I don't remember what it was. He had to go to the airport to get something. Anyway, Chezi pulls up. He sees this couple arguing in Hebrew. He gets out of his car, and he goes over and he asks them if he could help them. So they were thrilled. Here's somebody who speaks Hebrew. And they get in his car, and then they tell Chezi, as he's driving them to a hotel, they are telling him that their doctor is hospitalized, and they really don't know what to do. So Chezi says, I have a doctor friend. Let me call him and ask him what he recommends. So of course, Chezi calls Irv. So Irv asked what the problem was. Another surgeon that Irv recommended, and this man went to the surgeon. The second miracle was, apart from Chezi, the second miracle was that when they went to this surgeon that Irv had set up for them, he found a problem that was even more serious than the problem the man had come for. So they immediately scheduled surgery for this man. But the woman proceeds to tell me, she said that a lot of things came up, the housing, and every time, she said, we came to a crisis, she said, I would take out the picture and I would daven to Hashem. And every single time, there was a miracle that intervened. So the man had surgery with the doctor that Irv had recommended, and then the physician he had come for originally had recovered and been discharged from the hospital and was able to operate on him and repair. He had healed already from the first surgery, he'd recovered, and so they did the second surgery to repair what he had actually come for. So this woman tells me that, she says, I said, well, you still haven't told me what help I can give you. And she said, I have no idea who this man is. I would like you, I'm going to show you the picture. Maybe you know who it is. Well, of course, I'm sure you've all guessed it was a picture of the Rebbe. And I remember there were other miracles, but honestly, it was such a long time ago. She did say, though, that the davening, she said the davening really helped her also. She said it lightened her heart every time. There were many crises. I remember Irv telling me there were medical crises also. There are many things that came up, and she said every time she davened, it really helped her get through it. So after this, we said goodbye and we walked out, and it was really, we sat in the car. Now Irv had no idea. He just saw me crying. He had no idea what was going on because this whole conversation was in Hungarian. So we get to the car and he said, okay, what happened? So I give him the whole story, and he turns to me and he says, you know what? We have our own Fishman family Rebbe story. So I was really glad to share that with you. Those of you who have not known Houston without Ashel House really don't appreciate the difficulties that existed for patients coming here before. And it would have been a completely different experience for this couple if they would have had an Ashel House. But Baruch Hashem, it all worked for them, and that's my story.
Thank you, Miriam, for sharing. What I find beautiful about this story is that I asked Miriam to share a personal story of the Rebbe. And she was so excited to have a personal story. And that just shows the beauty of the love that Hasidim have for one another. Because for her, another person's miracle, another person's in connection to the Rebbe is her success. And her personal joy and her personal simcha. And that's really the love, the Ahavas Yisrael the Rebbe taught each of us. Hear and love about the other person, that it becomes our own personal. V'ahavta l'reach hakamecha is really in the story, really, that to me is really beautiful. So Miriam, thank you very much for sharing. And now we're gonna go on to Donna Gavin. Donna is also, one of the more founding people in the community, and we, always welcoming when we came, and just always there for people. So we want to just hear what you have to share. One second.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So Chanie called me and she says, "Did you ever go to the Rebbe?" And I said to her, "Yeah, I actually did go once, but then I started thinking about what that really meant. And I'll tell you about the once that I went, but I also have some other little anecdotes." So it was 1986 during the 9 days. And my husband had to go to New York for business. Danny was 18 months old. I was a few minutes pregnant with Aaron, who's 33 now. And we stayed in Crown Heights at Stoney Breisman at 436 Crown. And Brian said to me, "I really want you to go to the Rebbe." And I was like really nervous to go. I had only been from for 4 years. And I was just, to be honest, really nervous about who I would see there and what was going on there. I didn't really understand it. So we went on Sunday for dollars. We lined up. There was lots of weird people, which was the part I was scared about. But there was also a lot of really normal people. And we stood in line. We went through. The Rebbe was there. I wish I'd had a camera in my head because it just went so fast. But I was holding Danny on my hip. And when I walked away, he called me back and gave me another $1. So I guess he knew I was pregnant. I mean, I had only found out a few days before. But that was my only time that I went to the Rebbe. I feel very blessed and honored that I did. Unfortunately, I never went again. It was a very difficult start for us here in the United States, and we just really didn't have the money to fly up and down. But my husband actually went a lot. But I just want to back up a bit. 1982, when I met my husband, he had just started becoming involved with Chabad, and he had been to his brother's wedding, and they sang the Alter Rebbe's Nigun, and he said it was transformational. when we met, we dated really fast, got engaged. He said to me, there's only one thing I want. I want you to keep Shabbos and Kashrus and mikvah. And I'm like, I'll do anything you want as long as we go and live in the United States. So how did we end up here in Houston? Because I had an aunt here, but Brian came to Houston. He met with the Lazaroffs. He stayed at the Laxers. And he came here to make sure there was a school and a shul and a mikveh. Now, this was in 1985. So you'd only been here like 8 years, Mrs. Lazaroff, I think. And, you know, we had all of that, and we came. Just to back up a minute, I was very involved in Chabad before we came here, because as soon as we got married, and I loved the people in the South African Chabad community. There was a lot of young couples just like us. We would have hookups. And I don't know if the younger people on the panel here know what a hookup was, but in those days, you didn't have WhatsApp and you didn't have Zoom. So you had a hookup, which meant that you would get a call. There was a telephone chain that the Rebbe was going to speak. And you jumped in your car, or you got on your phone. You either went to the Chabad house and listened there, or you listened on your phone. When Danny was born, we had the bris at the Chabad Center, and they told me to write into the Rebbe. And I'll never forget it. I went to the mailbox, and there was this letter, which Danny has since claimed. I've been digging around trying to find it, and then I realized he actually took it. Wishing us Mazel Tov on the birth of our son, all the way from New York to little South Africa. It was crazy. So just fast forward, we came to the States. I went to the Rebbe, and then Esty was born. And we got many letters from the Rebbe, thank God, and we kept them all. So here I dug out one letter that Esty hasn't stolen from me yet, but it was from the Rebbe wishing us Mazel Tov on the birth of Esther Rachel. And he writes at the end that she should grow up as a bas l'Torah or l'chuppah or l'masim tovim, and he underlined the word l'Torah. And I'm sure all of you who know Esty knows that, you know, she definitely fulfilled that part of what the Rebbe saw in her. She was 3 months old. It was 1989, and my husband decided he wanted to go to the Rebbe for Simchas Torah, to the washing machine, as they used to call it, where they all went into 770, and you literally couldn't move. And if one person moved, everyone moved, and that's why they called it the washing machine. I was home with a newborn, a 3-year-old, and 1, 3, and 5, right? No, 0, 2, and 4. Yeah, 3 kids, and I wanted to go to shul. So we went to shul. Everyone helped me. It was really nice. Miriam Fishman, my machatenistan now, can tell you about Danny when he was a little boy and how he used to climb the mechitza and run around shul. So it was difficult. But he came back, and he came back actually with this. We still have it from 1989. He got kosel bracha from the Rebbe. It was wine from the Rebbe, and it's still got wine in it. Brian keeps adding, and he claims there's still some in there from the Rebbe, but he sometimes, when he needs to get some chizuk or kayach, he puts a drop in. But this is the kind of bottle that the Rebbe used to hand out. And then when he came back from Simchas Torah, he also brought lekach, and I called up Mrs. Lazaroff and asked her if we could come into the kitchen and bake lekach for the whole school. We crumbled up the lekach from the Rebbe, and we served it to the whole school. So the Rebbe was very much a part of our life. I remember Rabbi Marinovsky calling our house in the middle of the night when the Rebbe was nifter, and asking my husband if he wanted to come on the plane to go to New York. We weren't in a position for him to just buy a last minute ticket, which I regret to this day, but he didn't go. But I do remember driving up. Mrs. Lazaroff was standing a carpool line, and I remember, Michelle, if you're still on, I remember it happened right by Ariel's bar mitzvah. And then they came back for the bar mitzvah after Gimmel Tammuz, and she was standing on carpool lane, and I said to her, Mrs. Lazaroff, who's going to tell us what to do now? Like, who are we going to write to, and who are we going to call, and who are we going to ask? And the two of us just stood there crying, like, what were we going to do? So, here we are. Still very connected with the Rebbe. Still, I have so many stories, but I think that's enough. And thank you for asking me to speak. Can't hear you.
Better?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing. It's amazing how each person connects in their own way to the Rebbe, and through so many ways, whether it's through a picture and through, this is actually one of the ways the Rebbe always talked about, looking at a picture of a tzaddik is important. You know, the way we see how we surround our children with, when they're born, with holy things, careful with what they look at, careful ourselves with what we look at. And, you know, whether it's connecting, some people will, you know, hold on to that little dollar or that little kaishel bracha, the little wine, just to keep us connected in our own ways. Thank you very much, Donna. And now we'll go to Carol Nelkin, who her two children were the ones who helped start Torah Day School. The first two children besides the Lazaroffs who were there. And, you know, one of the goes way back. And so without further ado, we'd love to hear your inspiration, your connection to the Rebbe.
Thank you. At the time my oldest son, Jay, was 13, we could still have a private yechidus with the Rebbe, and in honor of the boy's bar mitzvah. And we were very, very fortunate. We were able to do that. And I wish I could tell everyone that I engaged in this wonderful, deep discussion with the Rebbe. But the truth is that when I went in, I was absolutely awestruck. I remember the feeling. I remember the Rebbe's face. I don't remember much else about it. I just remember feeling like he knew everything in the world about me. And it was just an incredible experience. But, you know, looking back, when I see people going through the lines and asking the Rebbe questions, I wish I had done that, but that did not happen. Although it was my first yechidus with the Rebbe, it was not Jay's first yechidus with the Rebbe, interestingly enough, even though he was only 13 at that time, because when he was 7, Rabbi Lazaroff asked us if we would let him be the one to give the key to the Austin Chabad house, which had just opened, to give the key to the Rebbe. And of course, we were thrilled to have him do that. He was 7 years old and going away to camp for the first time, and so he was going to be in Crown Heights anyway. And I have this wonderful picture of Jay. We were pretty new to Chabad at that time, and Jay had these long curls just all over his head, and he was wearing a brightly colored Madras print jacket. It's just unbelievable. When he looks at that picture today, he says, "What were you thinking?" But this picture is so wonderful because it's this young boy, and he's also awestruck. You can see he's looking directly at the Rebbe, and he's very awestruck. But the Rebbe is obviously so happy to have this young boy with the long curl and the brightly colored jacket, because this little boy from Houston, Texas, is able to say the bracha on the wine, which the Rebbe asked him to say, and he was able to say the bracha on mazonos. And the picture of the two of them looking at one another is just breathtaking. And of course, the reason Jay was able to say those brachas was because we had met the Lazaroffs, and they had convinced us to put our two boys into a Jewish day school. And shortly after that, we actually did become my two boys and a whole bunch of Lazaroff kids became the first class of Torah Day School. Now, Jay was actually in the first graduating class of Torah Day School. He was one of two, and he to this day delights in telling people that he doesn't know, he was either at the top of his class or he was at the bottom of the class. Now, and he doesn't know which one. And I say to him, Jay, the other graduate was Sarah Lazaroff Rosenfeld. You were at the bottom. So he acknowledges that's probably true. But I did ask him earlier today what his recollections of the Yechidus when he was bar mitzvah age was. And he told me something really interesting, I thought. And it shows you the effect that a Rebbe has. He said to me, I remember that he gave me a bracha that I should always be a source of nachas to my family and friends. And he said, but the way he said it to me, it wasn't like it was just a bracha. It was like it was a directive. And it was like he was telling me that this should be my goal. And it was more than a bracha. It was like empowering me in a way. And that's the way that 13-year-old boy heard what the Rebbe said to him. So I thought that was quite remarkable. Over the years, we really were the recipients of many, many brachas of the Rebbe. Of course, not the least of which was that he had sent his emissaries here. And we did have the advantages of having Torah Day School and all the other wonderful things that come about from having emissaries of the Rebbe who were sent to look after the needs of people like us. And we've always been very, very appreciative of that. I'll just tell you a couple of stories. We hear a lot of miracles that happen. And I think that because of a bracha of the Rebbe, and I think that I certainly was the recipient of one of those. And I'll just briefly tell you that story. I was having problems with my eyes, and my eye doctor was a very well-respected doctor, and he told me that I had a particular eye disease, and that if left untreated, it would be one where I would lose my eyesight, but that it could be treated, but it was the kind of thing where for the rest of my life, I was going to have to be using eye drops and taking care of this. And it was going to be, it's going to be a deal. And I was pretty young at that time. So this was going to be a lifetime of having to deal with this eye disease. So there was an occasion when we were riding to the Rebbe. And I always laugh because this is absolutely true. I did not ask about my eyes. I wrote to the Rebbe, having just been told about this situation. Completely didn't occur to me to write about my eyes. My whole letter to the Rebbe was about world peace and, bringing goodness and light into the world and that sort of thing. My husband was much more practical, and he did ask for a bracha for this very serious eye problem that I was having. And the word that we got back was that I should ask a second opinion, which the Rebbe frequently told people that. So I did get the name of another doctor, and this doctor said to me, having examined my eyes, I just can't understand how anyone could have told you that you had that particular eye disease, because if you have that eye disease, it's the kind of thing where it leaves a footprint in your eye. And I would be able to see that. And there's simply no sign of it whatsoever. And I can't find anything wrong with your eyes. There's simply nothing wrong. So, you could conclude that the first doctor didn't know what he was talking about, but that's just not the case. I mean, he was an excellent doctor, and it was the kind of thing, it's not the kind of mistake that gets made. So I really believe that I was the recipient of one of those brachas, which, by the way, in keeping with what Jay said, at least I still had to be the one to ask for the second opinion. So it was something that we had to do. So, there's so many Rebbe miracle stories, and that's just one more. But I really, truly believe that the miracles that the Rebbe brought about were even more so in those things that we don't think of as miracles. I mean, if you think of all the day schools, all the mikvahs, all the just whatever it is you want to say in places that you've never even heard of, it truly is miraculous, even though there's no apparent miracle. That is a miracle. So I want to tell you one more story. It's not really my story. It's a story that I just simply was a witness for at various points. It takes place over an amount of time, and I just happen to be the witness all along the way for this story. And I don't even know why I'm telling you this story, but when Chanie called me and she asked me if I'd speak, this story, which I had not thought about in I don't know how many years, popped into my mind. And no matter what I did, this story kept coming back. So there is some reason why I'm being compelled to tell you this story, and I don't know what the reason is, but maybe, someday somebody who's on this Zoom meeting will tell me the reason. And here's the story. Stuart and I were frequently in court, in the federal courts here. And there was one particular judge whose court we were in frequently. And he had one year a Jewish law clerk. The judge himself was not Jewish. He happened to be a religious Christian. And he was a lovely man. But when you hear this story, you'll understand what I'm saying is that he was somewhat unpredictable in the courtroom. Outside the courtroom, he did really lovely things and was known for his good deeds. But in the courtroom, he was also known for being a little unusual. So, but he ends up with a Jewish law clerk. And very nice guy, this law clerk, but just, a secular, nice Jewish guy who came here for this job. And we would see him when we would be in the court. So one Simchas Torah, I was really surprised. This law clerk appears at Vaad Or Vechom. And I was a little surprised because he didn't seem like a Chabad Simchas Torah kind of guy. He was a little straight-laced, again, very, very nice guy. But I was surprised to see him there. And I asked him what brought him to Chabad, and he tells me that he had decided that he wanted to visit all of the synagogues in Houston during that period of time that he was going to be working here as a law clerk. And he had been told that Simchas Torah was the time to go to Chabad. And again, I think to myself, doesn't seem like the Simchas Torah kind of guy, but great, it's nice he's here. And as we were leaving to go for the meal, I see him standing there, and I'm the only person he knows. And so I say to him, would you like to join us? And he joins us, and we have a nice meal, and that's pretty much it. Shortly after that, his clerkship ends, and to the extent that I thought about it at all, I never expected to see or hear from him again because he's taken a job someplace else, and that's it. So I think 2 or 3 years go by, and Stuart and I are again in this judge court, and we are trying a case. There is a jury impaneled. It's a long case. There have been lots of witnesses, and there is a witness on the stand testifying. And apropos of absolutely nothing, in a courtroom that is, got the jury and the witnesses, and Stuart and I are the only Jews in sight, this judge says to us, do you remember this law clerk? And Stuart, who was the one asking the witness, it was in mid-sentence, cross-examining this witness, said, yes, of course, he remembered the law clerk. And the judge says, do you know he's gone completely kosher? His father called me the other day and tells me his son has gone completely kosher. And the father doesn't know what to do. He's going to go visit him, and he doesn't know what to do because the guy's completely kosher. So you don't know exactly what to say. You say, oh, well, that's really interesting. And, the whole courtroom is looking like, what is going on here? And to this day, I can't explain to you why it was important for this judge to announce in this courtroom in Houston, Texas, that this guy's gone completely kosher. But again, I expected never to hear from this guy again, or his name, or anything. So another 2 or 3 years go by, and I get a call on a Friday morning, and it's this law clerk, this former law clerk. And he says to me, I find myself in Houston, and it's going to be Shabbos, and I'm not going to be able to get home. Can I come to you for Shabbos? And I find that really surprising, but I'm, we've all gotten those calls, right? And you always say yes, and of course we were happy that we were going to have the company. So at the time that I was expecting him, it was getting pretty close to Shabbos. The doorbell rings, and usually I'm very, I look to see before I open the door. But because it was, I was expecting him, and it was getting late, and so I knew it was him, I just opened the door. And much to my surprise, it is a young Chabad chassid. And I'm a little startled. I think it must be someone who is either thinks he's going to another house, or perhaps the Lazaroffs have a guest and they've sent him to tell me something. And he says, hi, and I say hi, and I sort of stand there for a minute waiting for him to tell me why he's there. And there's this very awkward moment, and then I realize that this Chabad chassid who is standing in front of me is in fact my house guest. And I have to tell you that the Rebbe simply transformed this man. He was the most delightful house guest, but it just having that Yiddishkeit in his life literally changed his personality. It changed everything about him. And he was joyous, and he just was I've never seen such a transformation. So that's what a Rebbe does. He has a Chabad house in Houston so that a guy can just come for some Torah, and then when he goes to the next city, he has another Chabad house, and the guy goes completely kosher, and then he just goes completely Lubavitch. And it was just the most amazing thing to see. And to me, those are the kinds of miracles that the Rebbe brought about. So there's some reason I had to tell you that story, and maybe we'll know one day what it is.
Thank you so much, Carol. That was so inspiring and beautiful. Your own personal connections, where the young boy was able to be made so, your son was so important enough to go and present a key. That's such a special moment. And the Rebbe's care for every single person, no matter what, no matter who, no matter how, the love between us. And I'm just going to end with a little story, a personal story myself. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to share a personal story that happened. And, you know, sometimes we hear all these stories that people were so lucky, they got to go see the Rebbe, they got to be with the Rebbe, they got to have the Rebbe, and now what? So where do we stand today, Gimmel Tammuz, so many years later? So there's a saying that, and I always heard it, that the Rebbe wird gefunden a Weg zu entfernen, that the Rebbe will find a way to answer you. And that our personal connections, you know, we can write to the Rebbe and we can ask the Rebbe, or we can look at a picture, or we could connect with singing a niggin, or learning the Rebbe's Torah, or doing any of the things that connect us to our Rebbe, or even Ahavas Yisrael, connecting ourselves to the other, which was the utmost care of the Rebbe, learning Torah. The Rebbe's way he taught Torah was so beautiful, where he took every single kind of way and he combined it all together. So, so this story happened to me in 2014 after my daughter was born, and it was a couple months later, and I was having a certain issue that came up, and I was feeling very worried about this situation, and I had to make a decision. I wasn't sure which way to go. Should I go this way or that way? And I kept mulling it over and over and over, and it was really, really nagging on me, and it was kind of like taking over my life, taking over my mind, and I didn't know what to do. So I spoke to somebody who went through a similar situation, and I figured I'd just hear her out, hear some advice, and maybe it would help me come to my own decision of what needed to happen. Obviously, a mashpia and a rav were going to be contacted too, but it was something I needed to first work through and then I could deal with. So I spoke to this person, and we had a long, nice conversation. At the end of the conversation, and I remember it was a Friday afternoon, Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, and I remember sitting on the couch upstairs in my house, and I was, at the end of the conversation, I made a comment that I missed the Rebbe so much. I wish the Rebbe was here with us. And I wish we could just write into the Rebbe and get an answer. And that was kind of how I ended the conversation, hung up the phone, and I decided I was going to go back to my cooking. But before I was going to go back to my cooking, it was Friday afternoon, and I was worried that somebody was trying to contact me on Facebook Messenger or my WhatsApp or something, trying to see if they need a place for Shabbos or something. So I decided I was going to go back to my computer, and on the computer, I would see if anybody was trying to message me. And I go to the computer, and I click on the computer, and there, this is what shows up on the picture. Now, if you look at the date on the picture, it's Aleph Tammuz, and my sister, this is what shows up the first. I don't even click anything. I touch my mouse, and there is a picture of me and my sister Esti getting $1 from the Rebbe. My sister Esti's here, and I'm right over here. And I felt caught in my pants. Like, what did I just say? The Rebbe's not here with me. I wish the Rebbe was here. I wish I can get an answer from the Rebbe, a bracha from the Rebbe. And seeing that picture on Facebook, I was like, wow, like a calmness came over me. And I was like, I don't care what the answer is. I know it's going to be okay. Like, whatever decision is going to happen, whatever thing is going to happen, everything's going to be okay. And to me, that was really, really special. And I remember thinking that Der Rebbe wird gefunden a Weg to answer, and the Rebbe will find a way to answer, even if it's through Facebook. So I like a sense of calm came over me, and I continued. And a few weeks later, I asked my sister, like, what made you post that day this picture? So she told me that somebody sent her a picture of the Rebbe with her getting $1, but she was getting the $1 behind my oldest sister. So we would go in the order of the siblings, and my oldest sister was Gracie, was getting the $1, and she was behind, and she did not like the picture because she wasn't getting the $1. So she searched and searched and searched, and she finally found a picture of her getting the $1 together with me in the background. And I told her, Esther, you know why you had to post that picture? Is because I needed that answer. I needed to feel like connected to the Rebbe, and that's the way the Rebbe showed me that he's still connected, and I should not despair, and I'll be okay. So that was really beautiful to me. I decided that I was going to frame that picture and put it up in my dining room. So I was a picture of me and the Rebbe, just as a reminder that the Rebbe is always connected. And that would have been nice, but 3 years later, I was having a hard time again, and this time my daughter was very sick. My youngest daughter, Menucha, was very sick, and I had to take her to the hospital, and I was very worried because it was around Gimmel Tammuz time, and we were supposed to take all the kids to camp, and we were supposed to get them off, and I didn't want them to be nervous going off to camp, and it's very worrisome, but you know, whatever. So in my head, I decided, that's it. I'm going to pen a letter to the Rebbe, and I'm going to just ask for a bracha that everything should be okay. And I did. And I sat down and I started thinking about what I wanted to ask and everything. And I ended up turning on my Facebook again this time. And right there, around Gimmel Tammuz time, Facebook shared a memory. And it was me and my sister getting the $1. And actually it was on Gimmel Tammuz that this picture came back up from Facebook of me getting the $1 again. To make a long story short, Baruch Hashem, we had a major miracle with her, and what she was there in the hospital, she ended up being cured from, and the scare that we had, Baruch Hashem, all worked out well. It's a long story. But the idea is that we're still always connected. A Rebbe, when a person passes away, you know, even a mother, a father, somebody in a family, a friend, whatever, we're still always connected. You still have the mitzvah of kibbud of aim. It's just a different way. Us down here, we have to do a special mitzvah in merit or memory of this other person, right? But a tzaddik is limitless. A tzaddik is above nature, and a tzaddik is able to connect us in even a stronger way than just a regular parent or sibling or child or whatever. So the connection is still strong. Obviously, we need to work on it a little bit harder to feel it, to not feel frustrated, to not feel like disconnected. And we're very lucky this year that on Gimmel Tammuz, we're going to be able to, they're having a program tomorrow in Houston for men, women, and children, where we're going to first have the half-hour program of Houston, New Orleans, and Atlanta. And then after that, there's going to be an hour program where we're going to be able to be actually, if everybody goes on with their cameras, you're going to actually, your camera's going to show up, your picture is going to show up at the aisle itself. And it's going to be a beautiful program where we're going to reunite with everybody together. And hopefully, even before tomorrow, we'll be able to be united in person in Yerushalayim together, all together. So if anybody would like to share anything, it is a Farbrengen. I know we were very lucky and blessed to have everybody, all the ladies who did share. If the night was longer, we would have many, many more people sharing, because I'm sure there are many, many stories in Houston, but maybe it could just be a start of people sharing together, inspiring stories and beautiful ways to inspire each other. We did tefillah, we did a little bit of learning. But if we can also,
Amen.
everybody can give tzedakah, and we can do, if anybody else wants to share a story or something that they'd like to share or a thought, you're all welcome. L'chaim, to only blessings in our lives, to a true connection to the Rebbe, to Hashem, to serving Hashem in a better way, because that's the goal of the Rebbe, to connecting ourselves to each other as a community, strengthening our learning of the Rebbe's Torah, etc. So if anybody would like to share, they're all welcome. Open mic.
Can I share something?
Sure.
So it was so special to be able to join this Farbrengen. And it was really nice to hear from people who I've known almost, well, since I was a little girl, but I didn't know any of your stories. So I'd love to suggest that this just be a start of collecting stories from Houston. Here in Melbourne, a number of years ago, the shluchim who came here gathered stories from these children. They gathered stories from their parents, and there's two little volumes that actually came out called Melbourne, the Rebbe in Melbourne, or something like that, and stories of people here, you know, and their stories with the Rebbe. And I think that it would be really beautiful for the next generation, really, and for this generation, I would say, like for our kids and also for us to actually know more about all the beautiful stories from the community in Houston. So maybe that can be something that can be done. Rebbe always said, you know, when we share inspiration with each other, we help each other to recognize, you know, and these can be stories before Gimmel Tammuz and after Gimmel Tammuz, because like you said, the Rebbe is with us, and we need to sometimes, we do, but, and the Rebbe's brachos are still coming to us, but as a nasi, as the neshama klalis, as a general neshama, we're always connected to him. He's always worrying about us. And like the Rebbe once said to someone, I wish that, you know, they would worry about me the way I worry about them. The Rebbe relies on us. We're the foot soldiers to do what he wants us to do, to finally get us over the threshold of Mashiach. And I think by sharing and understanding each and every one of our connections to the Rebbe and helping, you know, our friends and our family to understand that too, we could hopefully get ourselves all over the line. So I look forward to seeing the stories from Houston.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing. Anybody else would like to share? Thank you all so much for joining.
Honey,
Yes. Hannah?
I have a little story to share. It's a true story.
Okay, awesome.
I happened to go with Mrs. Lazaroff years ago. I don't even remember what year it was. Maybe Mrs. Lazaroff remembered. But one year I went with Mrs. Lazaroff to Kinus Ashluchot in Crown Heights. Do you remember it, Mrs. Lazaroff? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Chana, it's me.
Yes.
Chana, it's Miriam Fishman. I remember that trip really well. I was there too.
Okay. So remember Mindy Pollack was with us, and we stood in line on Sunday to get $1 from the Rebbe, and Mrs. Pollack, Mindy Pollack, asked from the Rebbe for, she wanted kids, and she asked him for kids, and he gave her $2, and he said to her, bracha and hatzlacha, or something like that. And a year later, she had twins. I don't know if you remember that. But she got $2 from the Rebbe, and a year later, she had Tani and Yoni, twin boys.
But Chana, you had personal story. Remember in the subway on that trip, didn't you? Going from one airport to another?
Yes. That I didn't know the way. I had to go to get to Crown Heights, and they didn't know the way, and I got lost kind of, and I saw a young boy with a kippah, and I said to him, I need to go to get, so I was kind of, who can I ask how to get to Crown Heights? I saw a guy with a kippah, and I told him, I need to get to Crown Heights. He said, no problems, follow me. And that's like, was like from Hashem that he sent it to him to me, and that's how I got to Crown Heights. But yes, I got $1 from the Rebbe twice. One time it was in this event, Kinus HaShluchot, and another time was when I took Efrat and Nomi, your daughter, to the Bible contest in New York. Remember that, Miriam?
Yes.
And we got, I got $1 then, and in Kinus HaShluchot. And Mrs. Lazaroff told me, you have to write the date when you got the Rebbe, and you have to exchange this $1 and give, when you finish the line, you immediately have to give tzedakah with another $1 to, to give tzedakah for all these people that are standing there with the tzedakah boxes. So that's what I did. It was my first experience with getting $1 from the Rebbe. But after 5 floods in my house, I don't know where the dollars are. They got somehow lost in all these floods.
Now they need to be in your heart.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my little story.
Thank you so much for sharing. Wow.
Anna, you might be able to get a picture of yourself getting $1 from the Rebbe. If you could access, I think, the GEM videos or the GEM archives, there's a way to find the pictures of when you learned by the Rebbe.
There was a picture, you are right, I remember that. But I kept the $1 so well in a Ziploc plastic bag, and I remember, but somehow, all this destruction in my house so many times, so I somehow it got.
The brachas are still with you.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks God.
The $1 is just a keli. The Rebbe gave $1 that when 2 people meet, it should benefit a third person. So Chana, exactly. Kind heart, you're always benefiting everybody. So that's beautiful.
Okay, good. Thank you. The bracha should reign over everybody.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Laila Tov. Good night to everybody.
Anybody else have something they want to share?
I think I would like to share my story because you talked earlier about how we don't have the Rebbe now, but if you still believe and you still write to him, then he's with us, and if we're connected, because I was 18, my husband was 20, and we had no affiliation with Yiddishkeit or anybody else firm at all. And we saw some things that just opened our eyes. We walked into a Judaica, and the gentleman there said, "What are you looking for?" We said, "We don't know. We just need to connect to Hashem." He gave us each a book. My husband one in Hebrew and me one in English. And later on now, I can tell you that they were from the Rebbe. We read those books. We got more connected, and we decided to move closer to a community that had a shul. We went to a community. It had 2 shuls. One was a Baba Sali, very Sephardic shul, and there was Chabad, Rabbi Lieberman. And so what happened was we were going always to the Sephardic shul, and we heard that Rabbi Lieberman was giving some classes, so we decided to ask if we could join. So he welcomed us, and he would always ask us, "Why are we going to Baba Sali? Why aren't we coming to Chabad?" So my husband said, "I'm Sephardic. I'm Israeli. I'm Sephardic, and that's my home." So later on, after a lot of more classes and a lot more times with Rabbi Lieberman, we decided to stick around and start going to shul there. And we did a wedding by Rabbi Lieberman. And my husband was so torn, though. He could not figure out to save his life. How could he prove to his father, to himself, that he was doing the right thing by following Chabad and doing all their customs instead of the Sephardic customs? So the rabbi said, all you have to do is write the Rebbe. He will answer you. My husband really was confused, really, I need an answer that I can, tangible, something material, something I have to see it. Just listen to me, the rabbi said to him, and he did. And my daughter was born 2 weeks early, and she was born on Yud Aleph Nisan. So that for my husband and for myself, we're here today, and I hope, the Rebbe's blessings rain on my children and with everyone else you're connected. You just have to open your heart and your eyes and your mouth as well. You know, like you said, update the Rebbe. That's also my new thing that I need to do is just to keep updating. And we don't always need to tell the Rebbe when we have problems. Always tell him the good things that happen. So I'm very connected and I'm very blessed, and that's why we're here today, because of the Rebbe. He was here and he answered us, even if he wasn't here in a physical form. So we just have to keep up the good work that he left us to do.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. That was beautiful. You also went way back to the Carlisle Place Apartments, those first early days. Amazing. You're always an inspiration. Your bitachon, your positivity, and you'll be able to continue with that to inspire others. Thank you. Anybody else have anything to share? Sharon, go for it.
So my mother's Bukharian and my father is from England, and he's, I don't know, like United Synagogues. He grew up in an environment where Judaism was very much about the ceremony and the pomp and the splendor of it all, and like the cantor would wear a special cap and they'd have the choir, and like Friday night was like silver dinner service and a butler and a waiter and all that. Like it was very like about the ceremony of Judaism. And my mother grew up very like the passion of like all the Sephardi customs. Anyway, till I was like very much older, I thought I was Sephardi because of my mother's like very strong in her Bukharian stuff. Anyway, so when my parents were in England, like my parents were married in England, and they had my brother and my sister in England, and they went to like shul there, and they had school there. Like it was all very traditional, and they came to Australia and they moved to a place where there was like no community. There was like literally no community to the area where they moved, and the nearest shul was like a 45-minute walk away, and everybody there was like trying to convince my mother, like, oh, it's fine, you just drive to the shul. Everybody just drives. I know in other places they like try not to drive on Shabbat, but here it's okay. You just drive to the shul because that's what everybody else does. My mother was like, we're not driving to no shul. If there's no shul in walking distance, we'll make a shul, So she was like getting together with my father about this, and he's like, I don't know, we're not like the kind of people that make shuls, and we don't need to make this, like surely somebody else can do that, right? Like we don't have to do that. She's like, no, we have to do that. If there's no one else to do that, we have to do that. So they started a minyan in their house, and my father was telling me how like they had to go and buy books from the Judaica store, and he had to go and buy the curtain, and he had to go to the hardware store and get the hooks for the curtain for the mechitza, and they had to get like a something to hold. They had to find a Torah and someone to read it, and they had like a lay leaders thing. They had to like create some kind of a community, and they had to convince people to come. Anyway, they labeled my mother this like fanatic because she was too good for the shul that was driving distance away, only 5 minutes drive. It's not that long. So through all of this, my mother was in touch with like the frum community sort of 45 minutes away. Like in people that know Sydney, in Bondi, there was a Chabad rabbi, a Chabad shliach, and he was like the head rabbi, and she was in touch with them. And my mother was like trying to, look, you're the rabbi man, right? Like, can't you bring us a rabbi? Aren't you in charge of rabbis? Like, we need a rabbi. We don't really want to be doing this. We're just doing this because there isn't one. Can't you find somebody to be the rabbi over here? So she kept like asking and asking. Anyway, it was suggested that she should be in contact with the Rebbe also about this. And, her family had a very strong connection to the Baba Sali. And that was like the tzaddik that they were connected with. So she didn't have a problem writing to the Rebbe, but from her upbringing, it wasn't like madhim or appropriate for a woman to write. The man had to write. So she's telling my father, you need to write to the Rebbe. You need to write to the Rebbe. He's like, what do I need to write to him for? We have this rabbi right here in Bondi, 45 minutes drive away. Can't he? Surely he'd be able to get a rabbi to us a lot quicker than some guy in New York. And my mother was like, no, you have to write to the tzaddik, and it has to be the man of the house and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, so she made my father write these letters, and she also said that you're the one that knows how to write properly, or like, with the right protocols. You need to write. So they started this correspondence with the Rebbe about this. And meanwhile, the rabbi they were in touch with, Rabbi Feldman in Sydney, had a daughter who had just got engaged to Mrs. Lazaroff's baby brother. And they apparently, from the story that I know, it could be that Mrs. Lazaroff could add some details that I'm not aware of, but from the story that I know from as a little girl hearing about it, that Mrs. Lazaroff's brother was intent pretty much on going to Russia on shlichus. And he had already been in Russia, and he had already set up himself like a few little spots that he'd made a connection with the community, and he'd already kind of in his head like made this plan of how he's going to be on shlichus in Russia. Rabbi Feldman was not so interested, I don't think, in his daughter being on the other side of the world, and there was like this dilemma. Oh, look, there's a community here in Sydney that wants a rabbi, and there's these people that keep calling us all the time. Can't you send us a rabbi? Surely there must be a rabbi somewhere for us. And meanwhile, what happened was, like, my mother kept nudging, and the other people also heard, oh, maybe there's this rabbi that's going to come. So they wrote in, and the Rebbe actually sent them to the community where my parents lived in the North Shore in Sydney. And Mrs. Lazaroff's sister-in-law, Fruma, like, she says that my mother went knocking on their door like second morning or third morning Sheva Brachas already at like 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay, are you ready to come and be the rabbi now? Like, come, you have to come see the shul, you have to come see the community, and you need to like come and get started already. And this poor girl, she was like 19 years old, and she just gotten married 3 days before, and there's this crazy lady at her door early in the morning and like telling her, come on, you've got work to do, like we've got to get started already. So she was very excited that they had moved. They moved there, and they started a shul, and I grew up in that shul, and I like had my whole connection to like Chabad and everything through that, and I was very, very blessed to like have that connection, and it completely impacted my entire life. There's more I could add, whatever, but I just thought it was like really amazing how God works in circles. And then I ended up here.
The power of a Jewish mother. She would work for her children, the education of her children. She'll do anything. Beautiful, really beautiful.
Yeah, and my brother was not too excited about, he wanted to go to Kotel for a year. And because of the pressure of your mother, the Rebbe told him, you're needed in Australia. He went there for Sheva Brachas, and he never came back. I mean, it was like, he came back to visit occasionally, but that was not his plan when he got married. Even Sheva Brachas, he was already gone from home. So that's all your mother's doing. And so even now, when Sharon has a question, she calls my brother Nachum. I understand that Fruma Farbrengen last night in Morristown. Fruma is my sister-in-law, her Fruma Feldman Shapiro, and my daughter Fasi said she was amazing. So I would love to know if it was, I think it wasn't videotaped, but something about some sort of a zip thing that you can open. I don't know if we can hear her, but she's definitely a very powerful woman.
I think it ties into the Farbrengen from last week, where it was not what I want, what I need out of a situation, but what's needed from me. And that's what the Rebbe was. The Rebbe gave us that outlook of to think about not what's good for me, because what's good for him, he wanted to go to Kailul, he wanted to go somewhere else. It wasn't about what he wanted, it was about what was needed from me. And I always, as a chassid of the Rebbe, I always try to think, what would the Rebbe want? It's not about what makes me feel good, what I need to do. What would the Rebbe want from me right now as his chassid?
Yeah. So, yeah. Thanks for sharing, Sharon.
Anybody else have anything they would love to share?
Chanie, I actually have a quick story that I was just telling Avrami last night. It's not really Rebbe related. If you give me 2 seconds.
Sure.
Mrs. Lazaroff, this is for you.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw that. I don't know if you saw that Trump is going to be denying any H-1B visas for any people who are wanting to come and work in the United States. So I don't know if anyone knows, but the reason why I'm here today is because Mrs. Lazaroff sponsored me.
Oh, wow.
35 years ago, she offered me a job at Torah Day School. And in those days, there was a shortage of, I've got my camera off. There was a shortage of religious educators. So I was telling Avrami that the reason he's here and the reason that we're here still, because our visa had run out, was because Mrs. Lazaroff and Rabbi Lazaroff sponsored us. So those kind of sponsorships are now being done away with the new law, so that all Americans can get the jobs and no one else. But your name came up last night. I don't know if you felt your ears ringing, Mrs. Lazaroff. So, my connection with Chabad, and then meeting the Lazaroffs, and then them helping us to be here, and so on and so forth, it just keeps rolling.
Well, having said that, I want to tell you that Hachana was on the line, and the reason she's here is because we also sponsored her.
Right.
And Yafa Cohn, I saw was on. I don't know if she still is on, but she's another one who we sponsored, and she ended up teaching for us. And they weren't observant then. As much people see Yafa Cohn with a shekel and they think, wow, she was always religious. Well, that's not the case. And she started out with teaching, and she taught first grade for me. And little by little, she grew in her Yiddishkeit, and so did her whole family.
Well,
so
Mrs. Lazaroff,
that was another
Mrs. Lazaroff, I landed here on April 26th, and you called me on April 27th. I don't know where you got my phone number, but you called. I heard you're a teacher. Yes, but I can't work. Anyway, so there you go. All right, just a quick, another connection.
Yeah.
I think the Rebbe realized that I need a son-in-law, and this whole thing was engineered for me.
I was waiting. I was waiting for you to say something, Mrs. Fishman. Anyway, okay, guys. Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye,
Thank you,
Donna.
Chanie, so much.
Pleasure. Thank you all for sharing.
Thank
Anybody
you for
else
doing this.
share anything? Any thoughts? Esty? Somebody? Anybody? We good?
I see Lydia.
Esty, you want to say something?
Hi, Lydia.
I'll say something.
Okay, Esty.
Something that just came to mind. So somebody was asking me the other day, we're just in a discussion, and she said she wanted to find some sources and sichos for how to make yourself a keli and brachos and tefillah. So we were throwing things out, and I was thinking back to things I had learned a while ago and hadn't opened up in a while. So the sicha, and I still have to go back and learn it because it's been several years, but there's an incredible sicha that the Rebbe said. It's on Parsha Shmais, where the Rebbe brings in the idea of trachbut bezayigot, that your thoughts could actually change a situation. And in our discussion, I was reminded of a story, just a little personal anecdote. It's not like so wow or so amazing, but it was like right at the right time, I guess, kind of like yours, Chanie. When I was in seminary, I was about 19, my second year in Israel.
My father was sick. Whoever lived here at the time probably remembers that. And sorry, I'm having some allergies, so I'm out of breath. That's why I sound like that. And I was in Israel. He was here in Houston. My students in recent years can't understand or imagine, but we didn't each have a cell phone in seminary, so we called home when we got in line and when we were near a phone. You didn't speak home every other second. And it happened more than once that like since it was so many hours later in Houston, I'd call home Thursday morning, was Thursday evening in Houston. Friday morning, we'd often like go on a trip somewhere or whatever. By the time we got there, it was too late to call Houston. Masha Belles, it's too late. And by the time I would speak to them again, it was Sunday evening in Houston and Sunday morning. And more than one occasion, Thursday morning phone call and Sunday evening Houston time that I spoke to them again. He had been fine when I spoke to them, and then he was in the hospital and things weren't simple. And I developed a bit of anxiety over that because I didn't know what was going on. I remember Shavuos was 2 days that year because it was Friday Shabbos, and we went to Yerushalayim. By the time we got back, I couldn't sleep because I didn't know what was going on. So one of the times that he went in the hospital, I had just heard belated news that he was in the hospital and that they were worried. And I was in a mood. I was 19 too. Now that I've dealt with 19-year-olds, I look back and I was in a mood, and I just felt like, you feel like you're out of control and you don't know what's going to be. And it was just pacing. And I went, and in my pacing, I went back in my bedroom. I had a roommate I was in Shana Beit, she was in Shana Aleph, who was at that moment studying for a test with a friend of hers in the bedroom. I open the door, I walk in, and I hear my roommate reading the words of the Sikha. It says, and I used to have those words off by heart, and I can't pull them up now, but I remember a little bit of it, like afilu achayla b'matas sakana. The Rebbe says that even if somebody's sick in a dangerous situation, that if you tracht gut, then tracht gut wird sein gut. If you think good, it will actually be good and will actually change the situation. I closed the bedroom door. I didn't say a word to them. I never said a word to them. I walked out. It was like to me, I heard her voice saying those words, but it wasn't her voice. It was the Rebbe talking to me through the Sikha. Scroll forward several years. I live visiting Houston, and in the course of a talk with my father, he mentions his Sikha. So I said, what does that mean? He said that when he was sick, or maybe even a time before that when something was going on, but he pulled it back out when he was sick, he learned that Sikha over and over again, and it became his, his support. And from then on, whenever somebody else he knew was in a difficult time, he'd bring them a copy of that Sikha. And that was the same Sikha that had spoken to me at that moment. So that's something that had just came back to me the other day because of that conversation.
Esty, I will tell you that when Stuart got sick, your father was one of the first people I called because they were chavrusas. And I called him to tell him. And he said, I'm coming right over. And he came over and he brought that Sikha. And he learned it with Stuart. And I really believe that Sikha kept Stuart going for the 9 years that he survived after he was diagnosed. And it is a very, very powerful Sikha indeed.
It's very powerful. And now my goal is to open it back up and relearn it.
Yes.
You learn it from a different perspective as life moves on.
That's true.
Which Sikha is it? Can you share the chilek?
So that's what I was just trying to look up before. While people were talking, I was trying to look it up. I can't remember which chilek for some reason. I'm sure it'll come to me. Just like at the moment, I can't remember the words. I can't remember the chilek, but I'll try to.
Try to find it, Esty.
Try to find it.
Yeah, and then share it with us. Anybody have anything to share? Any stories, any thoughts? Marissa, are you on there? Anybody have anything to share?
Oh, here I have it. I think it's Lamed Vav. Let me open it. I'm just opening and looking.
Alisa's asking in the comments, maybe we could learn it all together. I think that would be a beautiful idea.
That would be cool. It would be really nice. I think it's very, very relevant now. And I think it's relevant for anyone teaching children or dealing with children too. It's a good approach to bring them to the level.
Would you want to learn it with the community, Esti?
No, I'm getting a job.
Okay, we'll talk privately. We'll find somebody to we'll learn it all together. We'll figure it out. But that's a great idea, Lisa. One second.
You can go online and you can put in your name and your mother's name, and it's going to be read at the IHEL tomorrow, together with everyone else. So you can just go to the, your local community, you're connected, and you can join live tomorrow. But right now, you can actually put in your name and your mother's name to be read at the IHEL together.
Muted. Where should they go?
Barchenu Avinu Kulanu. I'm sorry, www.barchenuavinu.com. It's a global interactive Gimmel Tammuz, uniting Hasidim the world over. It's going to be broadcast live from near the Ohel. And there's a spot there where you could put in your name and your mother's name and the name of everyone in your family. There's a little plus sign that you can add more names. So like you can add your name, your child's name, your other children's names, etc. And other people there. So it's an opportunity for it. Again, so it's barchenuavinu.com. I think that it is on the Chabad, Masha Chabad chat. If not, you know what? I'll just post it to the Masha Chabad chat.
So that's gonna, the names on there are on the global pond to the Rebbe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Forward to Masha Chabad. There you go. You should all have it now with the Masha Chabad chat.
Okay.
All right.
Anybody else?
So I think that, yeah, go ahead, honey.
What'd you say? You think the what?
No, I said, I think that this inspiration of all of us getting together, and I saw there were like almost 50 women on this group, which makes it very powerful, considering, the the lonely start we had many years ago, that there's a lot of power in numbers. And I think that we just need to get together more often and inspire each other, and then take that to the next step. In other words, when you're about to do something, think, would I want the Rebbe to know? Would I want the bracha for what I'm doing? Or if I don't know if I'm doing the right thing or not, what do I think the Rebbe would want? Or ask a mashpia, or find a mashpia, or write a letter to the IHEL. So that you, from these Farbrengens, it's nice to hear all these stories, but we need to have a hachlata. We need to make some sort of a commitment of doing something, whether it's doing any of the mifsaim of the Rebbe or anything else. There was one little clip on the Masai Shabbos video that I mentioned to someone the other day. I thought was very powerful. This man walks by the Rebbe and he says to the Rebbe, I have two daughters and they're like not so strong in their Yiddishkeit. They're not. And what should I do? And the Rebbe's response to him was, be a good role model. And I thought that that was very interesting because it wasn't said to a woman to be a good role model for her daughters. It was said to a man to be a good role model for his daughters. So I guess you can take it both ways, that the man has to be a good role model for the family altogether and for the daughters, and the woman could be a good role model for her sons as well as for her daughters. So, you know, we need to sort of stop and think when we're trying to raise our children. What can we do? We ask for brachas, but then we sometimes go on our merry way and do what's easier for us. I thought that was interesting. But anyway, just to take on a hachalata in any area that the Rebbe was you know, teaching us, whether it's learning more Torah, whether it's on Shabbos, let's say, you know, reading only Judaic books, or, you know, they're just, you can choose. There's so much.
I think learning the sicha that you mentioned with the community, I think, is a really beautiful thing, because there's no greater connection in learning with the Rebbe's intellect. I think one of the most brilliant things, which often gets you know, pushed aside, is really the Rebbe's, the way he studied Torah, the way he revolutionized looking at Torah. You know, usually when you study, let's say, a piece of the Gemara, or only a piece of you know, a medrash, or only a chumash, or only Tanya, or only something. But the Rebbe had a way of taking all, every sikha he spoke was always interconnecting everything. But it was also relevant to, he made it relevant and practical. So that's really.
Right, so there's been the Sikha project that people have been learning the Rebbe Sikhas, which really gives you insight into how the Rebbe looked at every issue.
Yep.
I don't know if any of you saw the little video clip also where the Rebbe spoke about Miriam Bas Bilga.
Yeah,
anybody remember that?
Torah this week. Yeah.
What? Mm-hmm. And the way the Rebbe twisted that whole story from Gemara to bring a limud zchus on this woman who had gone off the derech completely, and yet begged Hashem, why don't you answer the Jewish people? So, and he just turned that whole Gemara story from something negative into something positive.
Whoever wants to watch that video, it's 70years.com. It's this past week's Living Torah. It's really, really inspiring of the Rebbe's view on Ahavas Yisrael.
And it's narrated by Mendel Kaplan from Flamingo, who gives the explanation on the Sikha.
So l'chaim to all, only, you know, it's interesting. Somebody came to the Rebbe and asked the Rebbe, am I a chassid? Am I your chassid? Like, what does it take to be your chassid? And the Rebbe said that it's not about how you dress or how you act. It's the idea is that if you're today a better Jew than yesterday, and tomorrow you'll be a better Jew than today, then you're my chassid. So I guess that's the goal. That today needs to be better than yesterday, and tomorrow needs to be better than today, and then we're all chassidim. So that's an avodah. That's hard to work on. To be better tomorrow than today.
So all of you know that there's 24 hours of Zoom programs going on for this Gimmel Tammuz event. You can hear every speaker that you can think of, and all kinds of shiurim and all kinds of presentations and stories and explanations. So it's going to be like a 24-hour Gimmel Tammuz event. So avail yourself of it as much as you can. And I want to give a bracha to Kesem because camp is starting tomorrow for the older division. And as we know, it's a rough start at this time. So we should pray and hope that it comes through Hatzlacha, and it should, and we're only really doing it because the Rebbe wanted camp, because I certainly did not want it. It's a very challenging time to do this, and so I also would like to have this bracha for camp and ongoing the bracha for school. And as you said, what the Farbrengen can accomplish, that we have families moving to town that want to enroll their children in school, and it's really challenging what school is going to be like. So a bracha that we should be able to accomplish our mission.
Amen. And it should be.
Amen. Amen. We should see the Rebbe's brachos begilui.
Amen.
Amen.
And thank you, Kesem, for spearheading.
Thank you for making it happen. This was such a treat. A real inspiration. It was so special hearing from all these wonderful women we live with and see and haven't seen in so long. It was so special to connect this way and to be inspired from those who are around us. It's something very unique and very uplifting.
Anybody else have anything to share? It's open. You know, Farbrengen is open mic. Anybody have anything to share? You're welcome to. Whoever was tired and wants to go to sleep can sleep. Whoever wants to continue to Farbrengen, we're here to Farbrengen. On Friday nights at the Shabbos meal, my husband always says, you can Farbrengen till 9 a.m. when we have to do chassidus in the morning. Then we'll shut down the party. So
maybe we should sing a niggin?
We can sing a niggin.
I'm going to say Laila Tov. Thank you so much. It was great. It was great.
Yeah, thank you.
We have good news and tracht gut verzange.
Amen.
I'm going to share a nice story that every time I sing that niggin, I think of it. When I was in 11th grade, I was in New York for Chaf Beit Shvat at the high school convention. And Friday night, we had a Farbrengen for like our grade. And a friend of mine from California and I, we were sitting together. And everyone started singing Lechatchila Rebbe. And my friend, instead of saying Ein Tzvei Dry Fair, she was singing We Want Mashiach Now. And it was like, I felt a little silly, you know, but I joined in with her like quietly, but we felt like funny, like we're 11th graders, why we like saying, you know, we want Mashiach now. Should we say it? Should we say it? You know, real out-of-towners with a sense of humor. I don't know what. So I wish I knew her name. There was the woman who was Farbrengen shared a story, and it left a very deep impression on me. And she said as follows, when she heard us, she said, every week with her friends, when she was a young girl, she would go and get $1 from the Rebbe by Sunday dollars. And they would go together as a group, all of them. They would say, we want Mashiach now. And the Rebbe would give them $1 and each one. And one week, her and her friends got together and they said, you know, it's so childish. None of the adults do this. Like, they just stand in line, the Rebbe gives them $1 and they move on. Like, we're big girls now. We should stop being so babyish. And she said they stood online and they passed by the Rebbe, and the Rebbe did not give them $1 until they all said, we want Mashiach now. And what I found so inspiring about the story is that the Rebbe created a whole new generation of a Mashiach-centered generation. Like, we know our goal, we know our direction, and we proudly can demand Mashiach without that embarrassment of thinking it's just a childish dream. Really, it's our reality, and it's going to happen mamash now.
Thank you so much. Oh my God, this whole Corona situation really has strengthened my faith in Mashiach. It's interesting because, you know, I always wondered in the back of my mind, is it really possible that the world could turn around so quickly? Like it's one way one day and the next day it's all of a sudden something totally different, a new reality, a new way to see things. And yes, you know, with this situation, one day all my kids were out of town and we were having programs and Shabbos guests, and all of a sudden, within one day, things changed. And so you realize that if the world can change like this from something invisible, we can definitely change from something beautiful as Mashiach. So looking forward to the changing times of Mashiach.